Friends and family, I am way too excited to talk about Gigantic once again. Honestly, I thought it was just like a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I got to have, especially as somebody who covers these specific styles of games like action MOBAs and hero shooters. I loved each individual character, so much so that I would cover them individually, not just do one review on the game, but like literally each character. And Gigantic has the best, objectively fight me, animations for each character, and I think the overall most unique game feel for the archetypes that they have in this game, especially being a fast-paced third-person shooter thing, sort of. We'll get into that, but Gigantic is such a weird and wacky, magical experience that I really wish it never shut down multiple times, and I wish more people got to experience it, which luckily now, guys, you get to. Gigantic Rampage Edition is being published actually by Gearbox, so they're probably gonna do it right. And also, it's being handled in terms of development from the same people who did the Master Chief Collection. So this is not even the first re-release of Gigantic. Before, we actually seen it republished by Perfect World, and that was about when it hit a stride, and it actually had like 10,000 something users. It was okay. It was fine, but it shut down. I don't know if they really needed the virality that we saw with competing games like Overwatch, but I will say, Gigantic is a fine enough game if you play it casually to like a competitive mindset. Like if you play Overwatch, not like literally as an esport, but if you play it like, you know, you do the ranked ladder and stuff like that, if that's your sort of mentality, or you're somebody who jumps into Smite and you actually play Conquest instead of just playing Arena, maybe I think you could have the mindset for Gigantic. And I'm going to be referencing those two games a lot, Smite and Overwatch, because Gigantic is right in the middle of those two games. So if you enjoy Overwatch / Paladins, especially Paladins, and you also play Smite, which is the action MOBA, it's really the one that started the whole genre, you're gonna like Gigantic. So, but let's talk about that. What is Gigantic? Why do I care about it? What's going on? Okay. So 5 years ago, I did a video lamenting the shutdown of Gigantic because it's a game that was so close to my heart. Because Gigantic, I don't know why, but just for some reason, I had decided as soon as I saw the trailer for Gigantic, what kind of YouTube channel I was even going to curate and make. I was going to cover hero shooters all of a sudden. I was going to, I was really focused on MOBA at the time, but Gigantic was a giant leap. At the time, I was working with Hi-Rez and I was promoting a lot of the new characters, and I basically covered every new character from every MOBA ever, and then of course moving on to hero shooters. But Gigantic was the first game that really actually came onto the scene, and even though the trailer made it seem ambiguous, we didn't know what a hero shooter was at the time until Overwatch happened, but Gigantic came onto the scene and we saw something new, something weird. And in fact, maybe if you're watching this for the first time, you've never seen Gigantic before, it looks kind of strange, huh? But at least you have some reference with Overwatch. Okay, so Gigantic was really promoting itself as an action MOBA. I can tell you right now, it's way more similar to if you played the free-to-play game from Hi-Rez called Paladins. It is not quite like Smite. It's really in between Smite and Overwatch, but in terms of game feel, kind of hard to describe because it's a third-person shooter / fighting game, but it's kind of probably more similar to Overwatch / Paladins. So actually, a lot of the character archetypes that you see in this game being relaunched, you've probably seen in a lot of other action MOBA or hero shooter games, or there's battle royales now that have hero shooter elements or MOBA elements. So probably seen some character archetypes now, but I actually have to report here that Gigantic was the first. Gigantic was announced before Overwatch. We saw trailers of Gigantic before anything. And in terms of like other action MOBA, I really think that Gigantic could have been as big as Overwatch. I know we had Battleborn and other stuff like that, and you're like, oh, it's expected. Overwatch just overshadowed every other game. But in the end, Gigantic uniquely actually had some truly special qualities that I could totally see why Gearbox would want to publish this again. Hopefully, we can actually do multiple videos on what those unique characteristics are. But you know what? How about we just leave it with this video saying that it's the characters. Of course, I'm going to be a nerd about that. I love character-based games, from fighting to hero shooters. I love the heroes. I love the characters. They have character. In Gigantic, I think the animations are the best. I don't know what it is. They're so cartoony. They're so alive. They're bigger than life, larger than life, and they're just ridiculous. If you compare the stiffness of something like Smite, and then all of a sudden you look at Gigantic, it looks truly next generation, even today, even right now, and this came out like more than 5 years ago. So Gigantic was really looking special. Now, if you guys want to know why it shut down originally, it basically never really found its footing, and even though it had amazing characters, it had amazing kits, there was overall some game feel problems. It was something like, they didn't have like an FOV slider, and there was some weird like frame rate locking because it was also trying to be cross-play with Xbox, because this was originally going to be published by Microsoft. It was supposed to be like an Xbox game. So there was a lot of behind-the-scenes shenanigans where basically a lot of money and a lot of time went wasted. So even though this game was announced and looking so fucking good, like way before Overwatch, right? Even though it was so early to the game that it still doesn't even call itself a hero shooter, it sort of floundered all of that. And eventually it did get republished, actually, from Perfect World, and it had a lot of fun characters, and you can go look at my channel. Not too popular, but I did some gameplay videos on each individual character, which I had a lot of fun with, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Basically, it floundered its hype, and it could never find its footing again. But I will say that when it was republished by Perfect World, it actually did have thousands and thousands of players, around 10,000, maybe a little bit more. My memory says 12,000, but I don't know. It was a lot. It was a decent number of players that you would actually expect to find on Smite at any given day. So Gigantic was doing okay. And then I guess Perfect World needed virality. I don't know what Perfect World needed, but I guess for whatever reason, Gigantic just also shuttered a second time. So for the third time, I think, if I'm keeping track right, Gearbox is publishing Gigantic as the Rampage Edition. Now with this edition, we actually are getting a couple of new characters, or it's more like content that was half finished that's being finished. So a couple new maps, things like that. Hopefully, we're gonna get some polished tweaks and things here and there, which we actually did throughout the publishing with Perfect World. So throughout this game's lifespan, if you could even call it a life, and its afterlives, it has actually been updated, it has actually been enhanced just a little bit, and I'm hoping that this is the time that we can jump into it and really feel this game alive the way that it should be meant to be played. Then again, what its original design concept, who knows? But then again, who knows for any game? I mean, have you seen Overwatch Season 1 versus what it is now? League of Legends Season 1 versus what it is now? All these games have evolved so tremendously, and nobody knows what they're doing. Gigantic is the peak obvious, like, spotlight of they don't know what they're doing. They were just experimenting and doing some bullshit, but like it kind of worked. But then again, it kind of didn't for what they need. For the amount of money and production value that they put into this game, I think they needed Overwatch success, but instead they kind of got Smite success. Debatable. Actually, not even that at first. So, slowly this game has kind of accrued a cult following for those who have been able to play here and there. It's always kind of felt like, even when the game was technically launched, it always felt like it was in beta. Like it was never just really all the way there, and yet we could see the potential. Obviously, really all hinged on these characters. So I'm so glad to see it once again. Let's give it a good shot. But anyways, I think the gameplay is kind of self-explanatory, but maybe it's not. It's not quite a MOBA, not quite a hero shooter, and depending on the character, it might even feel like a fighting game. But basically, you're gonna jump in, you're gonna have some levels, you can level up and kind of pick different builds. So maybe one character can be more ranged, or maybe with a different build, he's more assassin and melee focused. Things like that. Maybe you could be more supporty, or maybe you could be a sniper marksman. It kind of orients itself like that, very similar to Paladins, but there's more vagueness on the roles. There's kind of more vagueness on like how to even play the game, because you have these giants, which is the namesake, these giants that kind of are on the battlefield. They kind of work more like Smite's Titans, just like way bigger and better. But at the same time, it's like how to understand the flow and the pacing and the different phases of the match. It's all very strange. It's super weird. But then again, I think at this point in time, we've played so many weird fucking games from Overwatch to Smite. The difference is vast, correct? Yeah, I think we can all agree. So if we can go in with a little bit of an arcade mind, right? A little bit of an open mind, we can be like, okay, this is a video game as fuck, but like giant monsters and cool abilities and shit, and I get to fight other people with my buddies, okay, it's gonna be freaking awesome. And it is. It is awesome. But there's going to be some growing pains. I think as long as Gearbox maybe helps educate the player base, as long as there's, some fine-tuning behind the scenes with how the game feels overall, and there's no fucking weird frame rate locking bullshit or whatever in my first-person shooter, or I guess third-person shooter, then I think this game is going to go so good. I actually think that we can actually see a resurgence of this game proper, and it'd be so exciting to see a game literally come back from the dead, because I don't think we have many examples of that. I think Nerdslayer would have done a video on that. If not, he should do an undeath of a game on Gigantic. I know he actually did a video on Gigantic, and he actually researched with my video a long time ago. So Nerdslayer, get on this, dude. Undeath of a game. Let's see what happens. But we actually are seeing returnals of games. Can you even call them returnals? Where there is an old action MOBA called Paragon by Epic Games. It shut down. And we actually have 2 successors to it. One calling itself predecessor. So that's cool. I think we are at a time in place just to end the video to say, is it possible? Can a game that shut down for, it had reasons to shut down, so maybe it doesn't deserve to live? No, I'm telling you, this game's fun. There's a lot of games that have shut down that have been amazing, and you'll never get those experiences back again. I'm sure you can think of an MMO or 2, friends and family. Gigantic is one of these games. But not only that, but we live in a time of TikTok where decade-old music is becoming viral again. It's so much easier to find your niche and to discover new hobbies. And Gigantic could also be that game. If there was ever a time for a game to come back, especially with Overwatch now coming back into spotlight and people really enjoying Apex and hero shooters and overall, Smite 2, right, is coming out. This is the time to relaunch, republish, and rampage in Gigantic. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. If you guys want more in-depth stuff on it, maybe we'll probably stream this game. And just in closing, for those who have watched to the end of the video, we're actually gonna do an event. I don't know if we can do skin giveaways like we did with Paladins and Smite, but I'm gonna try to get some skins, I'm gonna try to get some game codes, I'm gonna give away stuff and things. So join the link in the description for the Discord, the Video Game Party Club. Much love, friends and family, and I'll see you in the next one.
As one.
Glorious!
Catch this later, boys!
Now seeking target.
Here comes trouble! Rock and rubble!